Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Creek. I'm with DMAW on a snowy day in DC. I'm very excited to have with us today Mark Becker, who is the founding partner with Cathexis Partners. He's going to be doing a presentation today about peer-to-peer fundraising. I'm going to not go into the formal introductions because we're going to try to give as much time as possible to today's speaker, but this presentation today is being recorded. And if you are joining us a little bit late, you can listen to it later. And in terms of today's presentation, when we're done, please save your questions for the end. But in the meantime, if you do have questions you want Mark to see or to kind of fill up the queue, feel free to do so in the chat portion of the online dashboard that you should see on your computer. Again, today's presenter is Mark Becker, founding partner of Cathexis Partners, and today's webinar, Beyond the Event, Creative Approaches to Peer-to-Peer Fundraising, is a presentation that was actually made way back in August at the Bridge Conference, and because it was one of the most highly rated presentations from the conference, we are going to be doing that today here on the snowy day. So with that, no more delays. Mark Becker, please. Welcome. Thank you for doing today's presentation, and please begin your presentation.
Great. Thank you, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Eric mentioned, feel free to go ahead and ask any questions as you think of them in the chat window. We'll probably save them up till the end, but rather have you ask them while they're top of mind as we're going through here, and happy to go back to any slides or pull up any live sites that we have. Whenever we're talking about peer-to-peer fundraising, it's always a bit seasonal, obviously. Sometimes there's evergreen campaigns, and other times there's campaigns around events or a physical day or a specific time of year. So not all of them are going to be live currently, but look forward to being able to give you as many examples throughout this as possible. Just a little bit about me, and I founded Cathexis Partners back in 2008. We support only nonprofits, have worked on thousands of projects with a virtual team working all over the United States and supporting clients all across North America, really helping in a variety of ways with their online fundraising. And my passion is really peer-to-peer fundraising, and that's what we're going to talk more about today. So let's start with a little bit of the history. Used to be, you'd host a 5K or a walk, you'd get folks to register, ask them to fundraise, and that was really kind of the historic approach. As the Peer-to-Peer Professional Forum shows every year, they rank the top 30 campaigns, and historically you've seen that list. If you haven't seen it, go to peer-to-peerforum.com and check it out. It's available for download. They're about ready to update their conferences is beginning of March down in Miami. So if you want to check that out, they'll be refreshing these numbers. I believe they usually announce those at the conference. So we'll be seeing the 2017 numbers soon. But as you can see from this list, it's a little bit closer look. The vast majority of these are your kind of standard run, walk, rides, a couple of bowling events. The most unique or non-standard are Movember, more recently since 2003, and St. Baldrick's head shaving event in 2005. But a lot of walks, a lot of bike rides, that type of thing that we've seen raising funds. So throughout this conversations, I'm not saying don't do your standard events. I'm just saying, think about non-standard events as an additional way to maximize the platform you might already be paying for, or as a way to dip your toe into the peer-to-peer fundraising space without all the unnecessary side things like having to get porta potties, for example. Obviously, physical events are very cost prohibitive. So if you don't have that much of a budget, if you're looking to have your margin stay higher, maybe a non-standard virtual campaign might do you some good. And obviously physical events take a lot of time when you're presenting them, when you're producing them or working with a company. It can be very time consuming. Again, not saying that virtual campaigns also can't be time consuming. They should be given the appropriate amount of time. but definitely don't have to worry about all the logistics. And most importantly, back to that first picture, no porta potties when you're doing virtual campaigns, which is definitely a big bonus in my book. So when you think about creative approaches to peer-to-peer campaigns, we're going to be showing some examples, but think about, tributes and memorial campaigns, a special day like donating your birthday or your wedding instead of getting gifts, baby showers, virtual drives like virtual food drives. I'll show some examples of that. Alumni campaigns, higher ed is really starting to embrace peer-to-peer fundraising. I'm going to show you some examples there. And then there's challenges like, obviously ALS's Ice Bucket Challenge, but really the possibilities are endless with the different types of campaigns you can do. But remember, always tie it in, make it inspirational, tie it back to your mission, and make sure there's a reason why you're doing this campaign. Obviously, you're looking to raise funds, but make sure that it's always tied back into your campaign. I'm going to start out with an example from one of our long-term clients, WaterAid Canada. I think they're a great example. They've been doing the walk, their walk over the years. It's kind of turned into something different in the recent years, where it's connected to Earth Month and working with Aveda and supporting all of that and really tying it back into the mission even more so than ever. But they've had this standard walk campaign and been very successful with it year over year. And then they realized, wait, we have this platform already. They happen to be using TeamRaiser. Why not use it for a virtual campaign? And so several years ago, I think it's probably about 5 years ago now, we worked with them. They're designers. I love this design. They've tweaked it slightly since they rebranded the organization, but really the design has held up since the origin. They designed it, we implemented it, and really a timeless piece here for folks to be able to fundraise however they want to. And this is really just these categories: the birthday, the holiday, the walk runs, life changers, workplace giving, or my fundraiser. Just, gives people ideas on how they can, what types of campaigns they can set up to do third-party fundraising. And it's just been, like I said, kind of a timeless campaign that they've kept up as an evergreen over time campaign, and had folks raise money for different types of activities in their life. Then they realized, well, let's go one step further. And a few years back, they came up with the bucket list adventures. And this is an example of one from 2017, I believe, from the Mount Everest Base Camp trek. So what they did is they came up with this brochure, and there's a minimum fundraising of 5,000 Canadian for you to go on this trek, and it has a full itinerary there. Again, this is actually from October 2016. I'm going to show you a screenshot of their most recent one here in a moment. But this is their first time going into this. So they obviously got to have a finite number of people participating, a specific type of group of individual, a profile, persona of the individual that they want to do this type of campaign. It's not just for the faint of heart. But what really caught my eye when I first saw this was this activity level they put to it. A Mount Everest base camp trek, and they have an activity level of 6 out of 10. I'm like, what does it take to be a 10 out of 10? You have to go not just to the base camp, which is 30,000 feet in the air or whatever. It's hardly a day trek. You're there for 11 days. So I was like, okay, or 16 days. So really just definitely more than your average 5K type of adventure. And what they did is they really tied it in. You can see from the itinerary, I know it's small print, but you can go out to their website now. They have their 2018 campaign live, and you can see that they actually are going and visiting these different villages that they're providing water to as they're trekking towards Mount Everest. So very interesting. As the campaign neared, they put a light box on their homepage of their website so they could highlight that and show off what was going on. And then throughout the campaign, they were updating it with images, tweets, podcasts, and showing the actual team, the trekkers that were going to the base camp, actually visiting these different villages and meeting the local folks and working on projects to provide water to these remote locations. So obviously really well tied in, and just a great job over those 2 weeks of providing an update of where they were, where they were going to next, and how everybody was doing and what they were doing, and how it was affecting their mission. So this is their 2018 campaign. So if you're thinking, looking at those last few slides, oh man, that would have been great. I would have definitely done that if I just would have known. Well, it's still open. Registration is still open for this year's event. So there goes that excuse. It's coming up March 14th through 24th. I'd highly recommend, keeping an eye on their website. Joining if you can. They still have space. They're still advertising. Support some of these folks. Again, this year it's $5,000 minimum fundraising. This time it's 11 days, and it costs just shy of 4,000 Canadian to sign up, and then you have a minimum fundraising goal of 5,000, and it has the whole itinerary. And I fully expect the team will be providing updates throughout that. I think it's just a really clever way to use the page. Here's a screenshot from the homepage as it stands for 2018. And since there is a finite number of people going on this campaign, they can work with their individual fundraisers and really profile them, good pictures, tell their story, and then link off into each one of their individual fundraising pages. I just took a couple of screenshots this morning of their fundraising pages. And while their fundraising goal is 5,000, I found it very interesting that I didn't see anybody that just had their fundraising, their minimum was 5,000, but their actual fundraising goals are like 10,000, 20,000. I saw one guy had a $10,000 goal, and he had just one donation of $10,000. So I'm assuming that's a self-donation. And he's like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go out there and do this trek, and I'm just going to raise my own money, and I'm off and running. And it's just a great testament to setting up those minimums. Even when you have a minimum fundraising requirement, folks are quite often going to look to exceed that. And I think this is a great example of peer-to-peer fundraising at its peak. So one organization has used it for peer-to-peer fundraising platform for their standard block, for their virtual fundraising, third-party fundraising, and also for a unique campaign available to a small group of individuals. So really always a clever group of folks over there, very creative, and always tying it back into and showing off how this is all helping the mission and supporting the mission. On the other end of the spectrum, much smaller project, Project Hui, the Woods Hole Oceanic Institute, they set up Project Hui, which is again a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign where their different projects that they are funding and supporting could set up their own fundraising campaigns and pages. And here's an example of a very simple little microsite. It's almost like crowdfunding. It is crowdfunding, and really intended. The project goal was to raise $12,000 to be able to go out and gear up, rent the boat, all the gas money with the boat expenses, and get the team out for the day to tag a bunch of sharks to be able to then track them and their activities throughout and how they migrate and where they're traveling throughout the year. And they needed a modest $12,000. And what they did is they actually provided updates leading up to this, showing, this is what they've done so far. Here's, we've got our map planned out. Here's what day we're going to go. We're all set. Got the boat lined up, we've got the team, we just need another few $1,000 and we're off. And then once they were done, they posted a video on the day that you can see from the website as well, and I would show it here, but it would be choppy because of the internet and so forth, so I'm not going to, but I can send you the link, or you can just search for Project Hui on and Google and find that campaign, but I'm happy to send you the link as well. But then they have the video for the Secret Life of Sharks, and it's actually them going out and on the day and tagging these sharks. So it's just a great example of being able to show off what the money you gave, this Baron Boys and Janice and Adrian, the $100 each they gave, it all added up to this $12,000, and they were able to see it actually in action on the day, and full circle to completing the mission based on the funds raised. So just a really clever way to do this. And they have, Woods Hole has this campaign still open, available for other members of their team to raise funds for their different projects. Prostate Cancer Foundation has Many versus Cancer, really slick, great looking campaign, which I think they're changing and kind of testing the waters on different ways of presenting this to the public, because the sites have changed several times throughout the course of the last year plus, but really great visuals and great looking campaign here. So they've got folks the ability to fundraise your way, set up different events, run, cycle, train for something, workplace giving, tributes, birthdays in memory of somebody. So they have those kind of teasers out there to give people ideas on how to fundraise. And then they have different team activities or groups, like Many, again, tying it back into the whole name of the campaign, which is Many versus Cancer. It's Many Cyclists versus Cancer, Many Daughters versus Cancer, Many Classic Car Lovers versus Cancer. And then from there, you can click through and see, using the tool that they're using. I believe they're using the Great Feats product, which has built-in ability to show off photos and videos. And then on the right-hand side there, you'll even see their social network and how they're connected. And there's different colored lines for someone else that participated versus someone that donated to them. And you can see how they're all connected. So very clever, and there's also a timeline there that shows when someone set up their account and when others joined their team or supported them. So very slick use of kind of a virtual campaign. A lot of this, of course, comes down to what platform you're using. You know, what do you like or dislike about it, and what is on your wish list. Here's a slide I put together about a year and a half ago, and I've been updating it since then. It's based on a book that we put out, a report on different peer-to-peer fundraising tools. I think we looked at primarily 28 different tools, focused really on 18 of them, but listed out 28 of them, and just kind of what their abilities are as far as, do they allow team fundraising, do they do registration fees, what the different platforms that they integrate with, and all of that. We put that out in 2016, and we're going to be refreshing that data later this year, but you can download that for free from our website. So if you're interested or looking for what peer-to-peer tools are out there, definitely check out that guide. But here's kind of a brief history that I put together just kind of as a geek of this environment of where we are or where we came from with peer-to-peer fundraising. Back in 2001, Artez and Conterra launched, kind of the innovators in U.S. For peer-to-peer fundraising. A year later, Convio launched TeamRaiser. Several years running on from here through 2010, we had different tools like Neon CRM. Everyday Hero was started in Australia. Donor Drive first launched. Then Blackbot acquired Conterra in 2008. Believe it or not, that's coming up on 10 years ago already. Then Fundly and Fundraiser came out, so you saw that, you know, there's a lot more different campaigns coming out. And then for some reason, Edward Norton came on the scene and said, "What? You know what? As an actor, there's just not the right peer-to-peer fundraising tool for me." So he worked with one of his business partners and came up with CrowdRise for peer-to-peer fundraising. So got Edward Norton to thank for that. Then over the next few years since then, a lot of different things have happened. Blackbot acquired Everyday Hero. Rallybound came out. Classy, which started out as Stay Classy, came out. QGive. Blackbot acquired Convio in 2012. FrontStream acquired First Giving and Artez in 2012 and 2013. Salsa acquired GiveZooks. Engaging Networks came out. Great Feats came out in 2015. Nonprofit Easy acquired Fundly in 2015, and some new tools. Giving Spirit came out in 2016, and a couple other acquisitions in 2018. So that's kind of the history. That's not by any means all the different tools. There's probably over, I'd say, 50 different platforms out there. And I'm going to be updating this, like I said, later on this year. But there's a lot of different platforms out there. And when you start looking for it, make sure you have a list, a very well-defined and agreed-upon list of requirements and what you need it to do, what type of campaigns you're going to be supporting, and what functionality is required and what's nice to have before you meet with anybody, because otherwise you'll be kind of drawn into the shiny presentation and what the sales team wants to show you versus the functionality you really need. There's a lot of great tools out there, but just make sure that you find the one that's right for you. And if you ever need any help with that, that's what we do. So another example, Mustard Seed, they do mission trips overseas. So they have they use peer-to-peer fundraising to help folks raise the funds that they need to be able to go on these mission trips. I think it's a great natural fit, and we've seen other examples of this as well. This is one of the first clients that we had that was doing this. They wanted to, again, set up these different campaigns, going to different destinations at different times, and allow people to fundraise for them. And just a great natural fit for peer-to-peer fundraising. Here's another Canadian client of ours, a good example, Unique. They actually wanted to get people to donate blood. At the time of this campaign, blood donations in Canada were low, so they wanted to come up with a new way to get people, instead of donating money, actually donate blood. So we took the peer-to-peer platform, kind of stripped out all the fundraising piece of it, and focused on setting up people that were committing to go ahead and give blood. In fact, part of the registration process was a link to go ahead and book your appointment to give blood. So I thought it was a really creative use of actually peer-to-peer fundraising used for something else, but really getting that viral, someone connecting to do something, to take action. Turns out, when they look back at it, it wasn't as successful as they wished it would have been, but they were glad that they did it. It was a good learning curve, and I think a lot of it, not that they didn't do a good job, but any of these type of campaigns, you have to, it definitely isn't a situation that if you build it, they will come. You have to market, you have to communicate about it, you have to do direct, if you can, direct mail, multi-channel communications, direct mail, email, social media, get the word out there. Start with your board on down and get people connected to these things. I'm not saying they didn't do a good job with that, but a lot of these campaigns have the best intentions, but unless you actually get them out there, get the word out there, you might not actually get the return that you expect. Another great example of a virtual campaign is Alzheimer's Longest Day. It actually just happens on the summer equinox, just one day, where people commit as teams to go ahead and do something from sunup to sundown on the longest day, and fundraise. And they really anticipated that, they would fundraise maybe the month leading up to it, but really the weeks and the days and the day of, they would do a lot of fundraising. But they have found that they were really surprised, happily, that the fundraising really was throughout the year. Obviously, it did range up and slide up closer to the actual day, but they were really pleased to see that it was actually more of a year-round campaign that people would sign up and commit to and start raising funds early and often. So they've been very pleased, and it hasn't really taken away from their walks or their other fundraising efforts. On the actual day, I think they did a great job. I took some screenshots last summer of what they were putting on the website, these Twitter feeds that would bring in people with putting in that hashtag for End ALZ, and they would feed them automatically onto their page to show the different activities that people were doing on the longest day. So even though you weren't all in one location doing this, you could feel the community around this, and that's what this is all about, is trying to get that feel and bring people close together, even though they might not be physically doing the event in the same location. Here's another example. This one's in the DC location, Humane Rescue Alliance. They've been doing Fashion for Paws for several years now. Just a really cool campaign. On the left is last year's campaign, and on the right is what they're getting ready to launch for 2018. Where they actually have models and famous people from the DC area and nationally walk the runway with their pets, and even folks that just wish to walk the, they don't have to be famous, but you can actually buy tickets to be able to walk the runway if you commit to fundraising. So you can also, the models and participants can also, in their fundraising page, sell tickets to the actual event, and that goes towards their fundraising goal. And you can see some of the VIP tables, like $3,000, individual tickets kind of going from $100 up. Really popular, very fun event. It raises a lot of money for the Alliance, and they've been very pleased with the results year over year. And they just very creative use of peer-to-peer fundraising. I'd mentioned we were going to talk about higher ed. It's getting more and more popular, more and more involved with peer-to-peer and embracing the concept of peer-to-peer fundraising. Obviously, a great natural fit in that is alumni sporting and the sports teams themselves, the college teams, baseball, men's basketball, women's basketball, different soccer, all of them setting up for Lewis University. They set up pretty, again, modest fundraising goals, and they don't want to compete with their other fundraising campaigns that they do with the alumni and the family, but they found that it didn't take or negatively impact their other campaigns, but they found these things very successful. And what a great natural fit to set up a baseball team and then show off the team captains, being the actual coaches and captains of the team, and setting up their team pages with all the members of the team, and then on the individual team players' pages, putting their stats and their picture. I mean, imagine how easy it is for that to become viral for the family members of Mike Barras and the other team members, to be able to see their stats, see their kids' picture, and share that with their friends and coworkers and raise money. The first year they introduced this, they actually were having meetings with the teams where they'd go out and actually connect with them and tell them what they were going to do this year. The coaches were really happy because they were always, doing these fundraisers year over year, but they didn't have any real way to do it. They didn't have the tools to do it. So they realized how easy this was, and they actually saw team members updating their pages and sending out their links during these meetings and actually raising funds while they were on all in this meeting. So very effective. So again, you build these campaigns, you have to communicate them. Definitely not a case of if you build it, they will come. You have to put the work in. Direct mail, if it fits into your budget and if it's right for your audience. Email. Question is, how often do you do that? And who do you contact? Social media. Do you have an app that you make available to your participants? What is available to you based on your budget and the platform you're using? Here's a great example of Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, local here to me. I live in the Central Florida area, and these guys just knock it out of the park year over year. Maria and their team just do a great job. They have a virtual food drive along with a physical food drive around the holidays, but they have a virtual food drive year round. And they change it out. They have about 3 or 4 campaigns a year, and they change it out. Some are hope for the kids, hope for the holidays, that type of thing. But they have a great virtual shopping cart in there that shows the buying power of their network of resources at their disposal. Like, obviously, you can't go out to the local grocery store and buy 1,500 apples for $35. That shows you the buying power of these food banks and their network of suppliers. They have a caveat that they show in there. We're not actually buying this literally when you put these things in the cart, but it's showing you the power of their fundraising and of their network, how far the money goes. So it's a great visual to show how it's all tied back into the mission. So, and they do a great job of communicating that, and a lot of gamification with the campaign around having different fundraising badges or milestones as they raise more money. They don't physically get anything other than these nice badges, but it's a nice bit of acknowledgement to say, hey, thank you for being a hunger hero. You've helped support 4,000 meals. And they did that because they raised $1,000, and that's like, wow, that's really powerful. And they have those different milestones throughout that. So very, very clever way that they communicate that. They actually send out, when they first launch this, they send out direct communication to specific members. I think if they raised over a certain amount, or if they put specific filters around it, and did direct mail along with email communications, and they were able to conditionalize this both to get registrations, but also after registration. It's really important to have a powerful tool, platform that allows you to conditionalize and personalize content, so that you can put in the email, hey, we saw that you've raised your first $100, congratulations. Or if they haven't raised any money yet, it can say, hey, we see you haven't raised any money yet, click here to look at some tips on raising your first $100. Or if they're a team captain, hey, make sure you reach out to your other team members and show them, give them some ideas and support them in fundraising. And if they're not a team captain, just give them a different message. Or if they haven't updated their personal page. So make sure that, if possible, know that there are tools out there that allow you to conditionalize that content based on different activity or inactivity with the system, and that can be used very powerfully. So you're not just sending out general messages saying, hey, if you haven't raised any money yet, try this. That would be pretty offensive to somebody that's already raised $5,000. They also do a great job with their social media. They update their pages on a pretty regular basis, like their Twitter feed has links directly to their virtual campaign. Same thing with their blog and Facebook. And they use obviously very great visual images available from national, and some that they have for the local facilities, and just really powerful in tying it all back in and really promoting those campaigns. They also do a great job of providing tools to the participants, so they can download posters, one sheet, a manual on how to fundraise, give them tips, how to use the platform that they're fundraising with, how to ask for money, and really making it fun to have these participants, these volunteers, really, and constituents doing the fundraising on your behalf. Just all these tools available to these participants at no cost to just make it easier for the organization to support their mission. We recently put out another guide, also available for free on our site, the Nonprofit Guides to Peer-to-Peer Fundraising. In there, it talks about the importance of having a communications calendar, and it provides a link to a sample basic calendar. And I think we're going to expand on that moving forward. But it really, make sure that the first time you have a campaign, you put this all down so that next year or next season, you can then improve on it and not start from scratch year over year, but put on there, your tweets, your messaging around email communications, and work on your frequency. If you start seeing your unsubscribes rise, then it's time to kind of back down on that frequency. But I think sending out emails once a week if someone's involved in a campaign isn't too much, as long as you're sharing good information, logistical information if it's a physical event, along with some information about where the funds are going, some tips on fundraising, that kind of thing. Just make sure you mix it up and make it interesting and worthwhile for the folks receiving it. So, it kind of answers the question, how often, we get asked that question a lot, how often do you send emails or how often do you tweet? Find that sweet spot, and if you start getting unsubscribed, you start time to back down off of that. Now, as you're going through the campaign life cycle, never forget about analytics, looking back at what your goals were. Hopefully you had those set up before you even started the campaign. How many participants do you want? How many new constituents do you want added? How many donations do you want to receive? How much total funds? And then track to that and adjust your messaging and your plan, your strategy accordingly throughout the campaign, and then also at the end of the campaign, look at how you did compared to your goals and why you reached them or why you didn't, and try to do that. But really dig in deeper, like we have with one of our clients, American Brain Tumor Association. We really dug into their analytics to look at it from in lots of different ways. But here's a couple of examples. Kind of look at your constituents and see if you've had a campaign, kind of legacy campaign that's been year over year. Maybe it's a 5K, maybe it's a walk, maybe it's an evergreen campaign where people can re-register every year, whatever it might be. Look at, see who your loyal participants are, see who has recently attended their second event, who's brand new, who might have been reactivated. In other words, they participated maybe 3 years ago, not last year, but then again this year. Who are those ones that are lapsed, registered 2 events ago, but not for this latest one? Maybe you can reach out to them or talk to them, call them up, find out, get a feeling for why they're not involved anymore. And then also those extended lapse, who registered like 8-10 years ago, but we haven't heard from. Maybe it was a one and done, and that's okay. But maybe there's a way to find out and get them to become a lifelong supporter, sustained giver. Now, how much time do you need to give your team have to invest in a campaign? That's always tough, right? And how long does your campaign run is another question. Is it seasonal? Is it annual? Is it evergreen? And I give the lame answer of you should invest as much time to a campaign as you can, and the more you put into it, definitely the more you'll get out. So yeah, those are all normal platitudes, but hopefully true and tested that if you can take your campaign, do the first year, make sure you document your communications calendar, your processes. The next year will be easier for recreating those same things, and then you can take that time saved and improve on it, and hopefully the result will be more return on that time invested. A lot of people think, well, it's a virtual campaign. I can have one of my staff members just do this as a couple hours a month, for 3 months, and it's going to be good to go. Well, you'll have something, but you probably won't have a successful campaign. So know that it does take time to raise funds and really be successful with these campaigns, but it doesn't have to be full-time job. Or if it's a natural campaign, it might be a full-time job for 10 people. It really depends on really what your goals are, and always trying to tie it back into looking at what your goals versus your actual results were, and making sure it's time well invested. Would love to hear some challenges, questions. I've been through a lot of stuff, so happy to answer any questions along the way that have come up. I also want to any challenges you're having, any successes you'd like to share, and I'm going to leave it on this resources page so you can see some different resources as well, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. And again, for those folks that are participating today, if you do have any questions, there is a chat window that you can plop in your question. If you're multitasking right now, and if you're wondering, okay, now where is this chat window? I know that normally that chat window sometimes will be collapsed. There's a little orange arrow button that points to the right, and if it's collapsed, just open it up to so that it opens to the left, and you can drop in your question there. But I do have a couple of notes that I took here during the presentation, Mark, as expected. Seed questions, I guess, as if anyone does have any questions and they're trying to figure out where to plop those questions into. You provided a lot of tips and examples. And so the one was the Project TUI, which I think you indicated was one of the smaller examples of a P2P. And obviously there's some others that you provided there as well. Not necessarily looking at What are some of the challenges? I mean, what are some of the common mistakes folks make? I mean, they go into a peer-to-peer fundraising campaign, and what do they do? Is there anything that is maybe common that folks have a habit of doing that is maybe the wrong first step?
Yeah, expecting it to, that, I know I kind of harped on it a bit, but that's because we see it so often, that expect that they just build the campaign, drop it, launch it on their site, link to it from their site, and expect it to be successful. It really does take a proper marketing effort, whatever that can look like for your organization, to make it successful. So you really have to put a proper planning around communicating that out and spreading the word.
Yeah, and that's pretty much where I was thinking about this when it was one of the slides you showed on communications, just in terms of what kind of communications. And I mean, I made a little note here. I said, well, I guess you have to have a communication plan, and not just a communication plan, but like an overall plan. And I think that's where the following slide talked about analytics a bit. What are you trying to get out of this? But so is it that just people think that'll happen on its own, meaning a peer-to-peer, or I mean, do they maybe over-engineer it, or maybe again, because I was focusing on Project Hui, you said it was an example of a smaller one, where do they sometimes just think that, oh, I need to go with an expensive platform and it'll do it all for me, or does cost always matter? I mean, could you do something creative with something less expensive, or?
You can do it, yeah. And it's really a stew of all those things. We've seen all those reasons, either individual campaigns or sometimes all in one, to why they weren't successful, or excuses that were used for not hitting their numbers. And I think backing it up even a step further is really starting out, making sure that you get your team together, the stakeholders that are agreeing to do this and approve the fundraise, doing a peer-to-peer campaign, and you get everybody around the table and make them nod their heads up and down and agree that these are the goals and objectives, and here's the resources that we're going to put towards this, and even make sure before you start, everybody's in agreement on what does it mean to be successful, because we see that a lot. At the end of the campaign, we'll say, oh, how did that go for you? You raised $250,000. That's great. And one person will say, yep, totally exceeded my expectations, very happy. And someone else will say, their boss will say, we really planned on getting 300,000, or that's great that we raised that money, but we didn't grow our constituent records like we anticipated, and making sure that everybody's even on the same page on what does success mean.
Okay, and now we do have a couple of questions here. Thank you for asking the questions. The first question is, do you have any examples, Mark, of strategies for fundraising that cure or relief related? It says that we are a small nonprofit arts organization. So what do you have for small nonprofit organizations, examples of strategies for fundraising that are cure or relief related?
Yeah, we have some great examples. I'm happy to share. Feel free to reach out to me afterwards, and I can share you some links. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We can try to grab a bunch of different ones, but definitely reach out to me, and I can share some examples. Also, go and download these guides from our website. Again, they're free. All we ask is for your name and email address so we can send you our newsletter, but feel free to unsubscribe from that. We try to get some thought leadership around that, and there's some other examples in there as well, along with strategies to go with it.
Okay. Another question here is, Mark, do you have any examples or recommendations for purely engagement efforts versus fundraising?
Engagement, that's a... I think as far as engagement goes, that blood donor one is definitely an extreme example of that. But if there's other specific engagement types you want, definitely feel free to reach out to me, and I can give you some good examples depending on what your mission is.
Yeah, and I know some of these are kind of tough, because even when I was taking some notes along the way, I was like, okay, well, what are examples of this? And then you mentioned too that you have a lot of this stuff online on your website, and I'm sure it's probably in there. And so now I'm asking a generic question, but to the last question that was posted here, let me see here how well I can read. The type is so small. In your experience, have you found that it's more effective to promote a specific project that the funds are going towards, or focus on the fundraising of a particular individual, such as a friend, family member, etc.?
Great question. Both working on both levels. I think to me, what I found most successful, I think I might be eating around the edges of the question, but let's see how I do here. Is having a attainable goal that is realistic to an individual, so it speaks to somebody. And that's why I think those micro campaigns and those smaller goals do really well. Like one of our clients, give kids the World Village in Kissimmee, Florida. They raised some money to build some new buildings, and each building had a dollar amount to it. And then individuals within there, those campaigns then had their own fundraising goals and told their story and helped raise the money. So it all built off of that, and communicating both those high-end goals and those successes of the individuals that help them get there are all very important part of the story.
Okay. All right, great. I'm looking, there are no additional questions. We're about 47 minutes into the hour. What I'm going to do is, if there are no additional questions, I'll go ahead and thank everyone for attending today, and thank, obviously, Mark for making the presentation. Keeping my fingers crossed that technology worked with us today, that we were able to record this presentation as hoped, and we will share this afterwards or make it available later for anyone else that's interested in participating, reading, viewing, and listening to the presentation. And we encourage anyone that is viewing today right now to make note of your contact information, the website, Cathexis Partner, so that we can have you take a look at what they offer in terms of tips and suggestions for peer-to-peer. And if there are no more questions, then I will just wish everybody a nice, toasty, warm weather here in the DC area, and Mark, who's somewhere down in Florida where it's 70+ degrees, we feel for you.
All right, thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.